All right, everyone, we are going to get started. Again, my name is David Glassner, Superintendent of the Shaker Heights City School District. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. If you've joined us before, then you probably are already familiar with this webinar format, but just to review, I will share some information. I have some slides here to go through so that you can help see what the information is I'll be sharing. After which we will open up the chat function so that folks can ask questions or leave comments in the chat. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website after this webinar. So with that, I'm going to jump in. Today, we're going to be focusing on both the Ludlow renovation process and the rest of the master facilities plan, specifically about Woodberry. As always, though, before we jump into the information, I do want to note that the information in this presentation is tentative and subject to change. The information really is continuously evolving. And so the information I'll be sharing will continue to evolve as well. And I'll probably highlight a few specific areas that the information I'm sharing may be a little more tentative even than other areas. So with that, let's jump into the Ludlow project. Just as a refresher, we are aiming to have the Ludlow School Building ready to be an expanded pre-K site for next school year, for the 2025-2026 school year. And so we're renovating the school building and the site to be able to accommodate an early childhood learning center. We do have some project updates. First of all, a date that I would encourage folks to pencil in on your calendars. We expect to have a ceremonial groundbreaking ceremony and community event on August 11th this summer. That's a Sunday, most likely in the afternoon. We're still working on finalizing the time for that groundbreaking event. This groundbreaking event will be held in partnership with the Ludlow Community Association's annual picnic. And we think it's going to be a great way to celebrate both the legacy of the Ludlow School Building and the future of the Ludlow School Building. So I encourage everyone to attend if possible. I think as many folks are already familiar with the GPD Group as our architecture firm. The GPD Group is working with the Shaker Heights Architecture Board of Review, the ABR, on final design planning. There is a meeting that is taking place this upcoming Monday, July 1st at 8 a.m., where the GPD group will be sharing with the ABR some revisions that they have made since the last ABR meeting that GPD attended. I believe, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I believe that we are first on the agenda for those folks who are interested in joining in virtually. We are also in the process, GPD is also in the process of working with the Board of Zoning and Appeals, the BZA, and the City Planning Commission on necessary approvals. And I believe that meeting is scheduled for this upcoming Tuesday, July 2nd at 7 p.m. for those folks who are interested in joining or learning more. Now, in terms of the work that's happening and kind of what are the different factors that are being considered, this list is not all inclusive or all exhaustive, but just some of the highlights in terms of some of the project considerations. First of all, and I guess I want to start just by saying that the district's priority for this building and site is to ensure that the school building and the site operates as a functional and successful and excellent early childhood learning center. We also understand and appreciate that this building and the site are a valuable community asset. And so we want to make sure that where we have the opportunity to create spaces that will be used and enjoyed by the community at large and by the Ludlow neighborhood, that we're able to take advantage of those opportunities. Of course, within the context of ensuring that the building and the site will be able to be a functional early childhood learning site. So some of the considerations that are currently being looked at and factored into the design process include the pickup and drop-off needs of preschool families. So just to be clear, why this is important and what we're talking about, we expect to have somewhere in the range of 200 to 300 students, children at the early childhood learning site. Uh, the vast majority of those children arrive via car, being dropped off by a family member. Some students also may be transported via van or bus. And so we need to make sure that the parking lot configuration is designed in such a way that will allow for families to drop their children off, uh, and so that staff can bring students into the school building. And the same would be true for vans and buses. And that means there needs to be sufficient space for vans and buses and cars to be able to turn around. Uh, and we also want to make sure that there's enough space for multiple students to be dropped off at once so that we can facilitate a quicker and smoother drop off and pickup process. We have heard that there are that some of the feedback we've gotten is to try to minimize the amount of parking so that we can maximize the amount of green space. That is certainly a value and a priority for the school district as well. We also want to be cognizant of the impact that the school building will have on traffic in the area. And so we expect that there will be some parking available in the parking lot. There will also be street parking for staff and visitors. We also expect that during peak drop-off and pickup times that the line of cars may stretch into the street. And so that's also a consideration as we think about some of the parking lot and traffic flow considerations. Based on our experience with other school buildings, we do work very closely with the city on developing traffic patterns uh, during the school day. That is something that typically happens once the school is operational because the city helps us to conduct traffic studies to make determinations about what makes the most sense for traffic flow and traffic patterns in the area. In terms of other considerations for the site, we have gotten a lot of feedback related to playgrounds. So currently there is a small playground on the Ludlow School building site. We are going to be transforming that playground to be able to serve as an early childhood playground. We've also heard feedback from community members and neighborhood members that would be valuable to have a playground that would be accessible and usable by students and children in the neighborhood, most likely older children. And so we expect to have at least part of the playground that will be built for older children. They may really kind of end up being, in some ways, kind of two playgrounds. One that is meant for the early childhood program and for the younger children, and one that is meant for community use during non-school hours and is really meant largely for older children. Part of the playground usage discussions include both kind of the location and the format and the equipment that will be included in the playground, but also the types of play that children engage in. And this also kind of aligns to what I was sharing earlier related to the balance between paved areas and green space. In our other elementary buildings, there is some area of a blacktop or asphalt covered area where children play. For our youngest children, our youngest learners, typically they have opportunities to ride their tricycles, maybe to play with balls, those kinds of opportunities. In speaking with preschool faculty, that remains a desire and a priority to try to have opportunities, not just in the playground, but around the playground where students can engage in those types of play. We also know how valuable green space is and wanting to make sure that we prioritize that as well. And ultimately, there is a balancing act and some decisions that we have to make around both having green space and great playground space, and also other types of surfaces for students and children to play on. The architecture firm GPD is also very mindful of the desire to maintain the historic nature of the building, to adhere to the aesthetic that exists not just at Ludlow, but in our other school buildings. That's some of the conversation that they will be having with the ABR this upcoming Monday. And we are sensitive and prioritizing environmental sustainability at the site. Right now, we are looking very closely at the different trees that are currently on the site and are in the process of conducting various analyses that will help us determine how the renovation process and the different construction plans will impact or potentially impact tree health and well-being, and what steps we can take to minimize or mitigate any impact there is to the trees already on the site, particularly the old growth trees. Just some notes about that specific point. We do intend to waterproof the building, which I think, as folks are aware, that will require some digging around the building. We hope to minimize any damage to tree roots that are closer to the building, but that may be something that we have to take into account in order to waterproof the building. In some of the initial analyses that we've gotten, we have also looked at the current playground design. The current playground design, because of grading, does include the addition of a retention wall or a retaining wall to help create more of a terrace coming off some of the sloping there. And that might impact some of the trees currently on the site. We are looking to see if we can explore other designs to try to minimize or mitigate some of the impact to the trees that redesigning the playground will include. And again, this is another good example of some of the balancing that we have to consider because we know how important it is to have a great playground for not just the children at the early childhood learning center to enjoy, but also for the neighborhood to enjoy. And we want to minimize any impact on the trees on the site. So those are just some of the considerations. I know we've also gotten feedback related to some of the fields in the site, and that there currently is some flooding that can occur when there are heavy rain events. We are looking into that a little more. Just to be clear, however, the original scope of the project, of this renovation project, the original scope and the original budget of this renovation project really focused on the building, the pre-K building, the Ludlow building itself, to make it into a pre-K space, and the immediate site around the building, since that will be the site that's really used by the early childhood learning center. We may be able to look at other parts or elements of the site. Currently, those elements are not included in our budget or in the original scope of work. So that's something that we're looking into and hope to have more information to share over the coming weeks and months. We are continuously engaging our community around the Ludlow renovation process. Here are just some highlights of things that either are ongoing or may be new since we last touched base. There are lots of block parties and other neighborhood gatherings happening over the summer, so we're doing our best to have district representatives and others there to help share information about the Ludlow renovation process and the master facilities plan in general. I just participated earlier today in a meeting with a group of realtors who have clients in the Shaker Heights city area. Shared with them some updates, and they shared feedback that they get from their clients. We do expect to mail letters to the Ludlow neighborhood, folks who live in the Ludlow neighborhood. I know this says Ludlow Neighborhood Association. It's really specific to the folks who live in the Ludlow neighborhood will get mail letters within the next couple of weeks, providing additional details about where we are at in the process and in the plan, and inviting them to attend the groundbreaking on August 11th. We also expect to have yard signs that we will be distributing and that will be available for pickup starting by the week of July 8th. There's also a school plaque dedication at the main library to recognize and celebrate the legacy of the Moreland School that's taking place on August 4th. So we'll certainly be talking to community members about the Ludlow process at the school plaque dedication. And I mentioned the groundbreaking as well. Again, this list is not totally exhaustive or fully inclusive, but just some highlights, some of the engagement work that's taking place as we speak. So that concludes my updates related to the Ludlow process, the Ludlow renovation process. I'm now going to shift gears and talk about Woodberry. Now, Again, just a reminder and a refresher for those listening in. Um, our our plan is to renovate all of our K through 8 buildings. Woodberry is the first of those buildings that will be going through renovation. We have moved students and faculty out of that building as of the end of this school year. Sixth graders will be going to the middle school where they will be utilizing that space as swing space while Woodberry is being renovated. Fifth graders will remain in their elementary buildings moving forward. So elementary buildings will now become K through 5 elementary buildings. When Woodberry reopens, it will become a 6 to 8 school building. So we are kind of lifting off here in terms of the Woodberry renovation process. What I have here is just a tentative design timeline. I know I said this at the beginning of the presentation, but I'll underscore it again here. This remains tentative at this point. But in terms of the design schedule, right now we expect the schematic, the initial design phase to take place really from now through the end of this calendar year. After that, we'll move into a more detailed part of the design process, the design development process that will take place from the end of this calendar year for about another 6 months till June of 2025, and then construction design, the construction documents process will take place from June through December of 2025. So you can see from this timeline that we expect to be engaged in the design process for about the next year and a half for Woodberry. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, we've kind of lifted off with the Woodberry renovation process. We have launched this partnership, and so far I have to say it has been an excellent partnership between the district and our architecture firms, the GPD Group and RP Madison, our construction firm, Gilbane Construction, and the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, who are our state partners in this project. I've had the opportunity to meet with representatives from all of those different entities, and I can say so far we have established a very effective and successful working relationship, and we very much appreciate the work of our partners so far in this project. What work have we been doing? Well, we've been discussing the project timeline, as you saw from the previous slide. We have also been establishing some of the very early design needs from building users. And what does this mean? This means that our architecture firms have started meeting with some of the teachers and administrators who use Woodberry, who are going to be part of the middle years building, to get a sense just from the outset of what the main priorities and needs are for this building. So for example, meeting with some of our athletic faculty to start thinking and learning about what some of the priorities are for the gym spaces and the pool space that will exist at Woodberry. Or meeting with our music faculty to learn about what some of the priorities are for the music spaces that will exist in the renovated Woodberry. So this just gives the architecture firms some really kind of clear idea of what these priorities are as we start developing some initial designs for the Woodberry building. We are also in the process of determining an engagement plan for that schematic design phase. We do have a board meeting coming up this upcoming Tuesday, and we expect to share some more details around the engagement plan at that board meeting. One last thing I want to note related to Woodberry before I move on to the next slide is that the scope of the project, just to be clear, includes maintaining the historic center of the building, the kind of central core of the building. The wings of the building will be demolished and renovated to create new and additional learning spaces for our students, faculty, and families to enjoy. So that's the scope of the Woodberry project. That has not changed. We can expect that to continue to be the case. So in terms of the Woodberry engagement around Woodberry, and you'll see there are some things here that are repeated from Ludlow. Obviously, there's overlap. Currently, as we speak, the district has shared an initial feedback survey just to get folks to start thinking about what are some of the priorities related to the type of education and the type of learning that students engage in at Woodberry, and how the architecture of the building can help contribute to that. I know that I've heard some feedback from folks that this survey really maybe is very open-ended, and that folks, it's not meant to be as specific as surveys or other types of feedback opportunities that will exist later in this process. But we do think it's important to start thinking about what some of our goals as a community are related to the Woodberry School building. We are also getting input from key building users. I mentioned that just a minute ago. That includes largely speaking about faculty, administrators, and other staff that use the building, just to get a clear sense of what some priorities are as we move forward with some initial design ideas. There are community block parties. We expect to have an educational visioning session related specifically to Woodberry in August or maybe early September. That visioning session includes internal and external stakeholders, students and adults, and really is an opportunity, again, to think a little more high level about what are some of our goals in terms of the types of learning experiences that students have access to at Woodberry and how that might impact the architectural design of the building. There are lots of upcoming school events, including our back to school barbecue in August. I encourage everybody to attend. We'll have tables at those events. We will also be doing some outreach specific to folks who live in and around the Woodberry neighborhood. Similar to what we are doing with the Ludlow neighborhood, sending them direct letters. We'll be doing similar outreach efforts for Woodberry neighbors. And there will be opportunities starting around October for community members to start providing some input on initial schematic designs. Again, these are kind of a little more big picture ideas of what the Woodberry renovation could look like. We certainly look forward to getting community input on those designs around the middle of the fall. One last thing, so just one last slide, I should say, related to some planned next steps. The district did recently release in the past few days a request for proposals for a firm to assist in the redesign of the middle years experience that will align with the opening of the new school building. I certainly encourage folks to take a look at that RFP. It is on our school website. It is, just to be clear, what this is looking for. It is looking for support to help think through what the day-to-day experience of students will be like when they come back to a new and renovated and reimagined middle years building at Woodberry. This includes thinking about things like what the master schedule will look like, if there is advisory or some type of homeroom program, what that looks like, what collaborative planning time looks like for teachers and when that will happen. So again, I encourage folks to look for that RFP or share it if it's something either you're interested in or may know people who are interested in. We're looking forward to partnering with some additional support to help think through that reopening of the Woodberry building. We expect to create a student facilities group in the fall just to get student perspectives and input on the renovations. And there will be, as I mentioned already, opportunities for all stakeholders to provide feedback on initial Woodberry designs later this fall. I know I just shared a lot of information. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We are now going to open up the chat function, and I'd like to welcome Kristen Miller, our Assistant Communications Director, to help moderate and facilitate those questions and chats as they come in. So you're welcome to put questions and comments in the chat function.
Yes, that is
thank you, everybody, for joining.
open. All right. So our first question, Dr. Glasner, can you talk about the Woodberry Pool? Will there be a pool at the Woodberry site? What's going to happen with that?
Great question. So just where we're starting right now, we currently have two pools in the school district. One is at Woodberry and one is at the middle school. Once the Woodberry renovation process commences later this summer, the Woodberry Pool will be closed. So we'll be operating with just one pool while the Woodberry renovations take place. That will be at the middle school. We have been working with the city recreation department and other swimming leadership around the city to make sure that we can accommodate all the different uses that the community currently enjoys in our pools at the middle school pool, and we're optimistic that and confident that that will take place. The Woodberry building will include a new pool, or what in the construction world they call it a natatorium. Um, so it will include a new pool. We expect it to be bigger than the current Woodberry pool. It will serve as the only district pool moving forward. Once the middle school site is taken offline, we expect the pool to be taken offline as well. So we're looking forward though to having a new competition level pool that will be accessible by our students and community members in the Woodberry site. Sorry, that was a long answer to a short question.
That's all right. Thank you. What is the target opening date of Woodberry?
You know, I'm going to not answer that question directly for now because we are in the process of refining the construction schedule now that we have both GPD and Gilbane on board. They are GPD, I should say, RP Madison and Gilbane on board. They are working collaboratively to really determine when Woodberry will be prepared to be open. We also, I should add, are trying our best to try to keep the construction schedule on as short a timeline as possible, while of course making sure we don't do anything too rushed or in a hasty manner. We have talked in the past about Woodberry being open potentially in the middle of a school year instead of having to wait till the end of a school year. That's something that we are still very much considering as a possibility. And our architecture firms and construction firm are keeping that as an open idea. But we should be able to have more information on that soon. The other piece of the construction schedule I would like to mention is the order of the elementary buildings. Our construction firm and architecture firms are looking at different factors related to the order of the elementary buildings. And we expect to have more information about that soon. Just since I'm talking about it, I'll mention that some of the factors that they're looking at include both the size of the building and the enrollment in the building. So, it doesn't make sense, for example, to do our biggest buildings first, because that way we're going up front with some of the probably costlier buildings rather than waiting till the end of the renovation process. We're also looking at proximity. So for example, we will be working on the Woodberry site for a couple of years. It may make sense to do on-a-way sooner rather than later, since that site will already be kind of prepped. Since this campus area, I guess I would say, will already be prepped as a construction site, it might make sense to do on-a-way kind of as part of that process and earlier in the order. So those are just some of the factors. The one other thing I mentioned related to order is the addition to the Fernway Elementary building. We expect that will likely take place earlier in the construction process, but that's still being finalized.
Great, thank you. Back to the Woodberry Pool. Since the design phase is rather lengthy, can you talk about why it was the need to close the pool as early as we?
Yeah, great question. And I would expand that question just to include the building itself. We do have some summer programming that's currently taking place in the building, and talking with the recreation department, we definitely all agreed that it makes sense to continue to maintain recreation programming for longer. Really for, as long as we could. Our plan right now is to go out for what's called an early demo bid package. That means that we can start the demolition of parts of the building that we know are going to be demolished, which include the wings and the pool, earlier in the process. And so by having the building vacated by this fall, that allows us to prep the building for demolition or parts of the building that will be demolished, and to do other what I like to call pre-renovation work. There is, for example, we're going to have to do asbestos abatement, and to start doing some of that work earlier rather than later. So this allows us really to get the building ready for all those different things, and allows us to keep the renovation process moving really kind of in a timely manner so that we're not waiting to vacate the building in order to do these things, and we can really move forward more speedily with the renovation process.
Yeah. What are the plans for the community rose garden, which is on the Woodberry property? Do you have any information about that?
I don't yet have information about that. I know there are a number of different parts of our buildings that really have a lot of importance to our community for a number of different reasons. I would add Peter's Garden at Onaway would be maybe another example of something that's in our buildings that really has some real value in for our community. And our hope is to be able to maintain those sites and those types of sites as much as possible. Without having designs yet, though, it's impossible for me to say or to guarantee exactly what will happen with the Rose Garden or with other sites like Peter's Garden and other kind of those kinds of sites in our schools. I will say we have had, I know this isn't directly related to the Rose Garden, but at Woodberry, we have walked through the building with our Shaker Schools Foundation, as well as representatives from the Shaker Library, to look at artifacts that have historical or sentimental value, and to see what are things that we can do to help preserve those artifacts, to share some of those artifacts with the library or with our community members where that's possible. So it's definitely something that we're invested in trying to maintain some of those parts of our buildings inside and outside that have significance and historical value.
And just a follow-up note to that, a note to inquire or ask to include the Rose Garden volunteers as stakeholders in this process, which I think is definitely needed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Another question, it says, are there any plans to review and adjust attendance zones prior to starting the design work on the elementary schools? And how could that affect students in neighborhoods such as the Moreland neighborhood?
Attendance zones is something that has come up throughout this process. It's something that we are still looking at. We don't yet have a defined timeline in terms of when we expect anything to happen around attendance zones. And by happen, I mean really starting with some type of review process related to attendance zones. It is something that I do expect that we will look more closely at, but we don't yet have any more specifics around that. We'll certainly keep our community informed as that process evolves.
Just reviewing one of the questions here. So in preserving the building elements and artifacts, are we working with architects and a historic consultant to look for opportunities to take elements from the Woodberry wings and incorporate them in the work?
One of the reasons that we chose the GPD group and RP Madison is because of their experience with historic buildings. At this point, we are not working with any additional consultants specifically related to historic preservation, but both of those firms have experience with historic buildings. And I would add, in addition to those firms, we are fortunate that we have expertise in our community as well, both from community members, but also from the Architectural Board of Review, and other members of our city staff that are certainly helping make sure that we align to Shaker's architecture values and aesthetic, and incorporate historic preservation into our design planning.
So switching gears a little bit off of the Woodberry site per se, but related to the Woodberry work, how long will those modular classrooms remain at the middle school?
Great question. I'm glad you asked. I didn't mention this earlier on. If you have passed by the middle school site recently, you may notice some activity related to the modular classrooms being installed. We expect those modular classrooms to be ready to go at the beginning of the school year. It's going to be a tight timeline. I want to be clear. They are working every day to make sure that the modular classrooms are ready for our students and teachers to use when the school year starts. We have signed a 2-year contract with the modular company to have those modular units installed on the middle school. Um, we know we'll need them for at least 2 years because we know we'll have our 6 to 8 students there for around that amount of time. If we determine that we need the modular units to continue to create capacity when our elementary students go to the middle school site, then that's certainly something that we would be open to, but we have not made that determination yet. So what I can say right now is at least 2 years, and possibly longer.
Perfect, thank you. Well, we can wait a moment here. That's all the questions we currently have in the chat. While we wait a second to see if any more come in, I just wanted to let everyone know that our next facilities update webinar is currently scheduled for Wednesday, July 31st, again at noon. And we'll put that information out there online as well, on our website and on social media, and we will be emailing all families and community stakeholders directly about that.
Before we close, just a couple of very quick things. I imagine folks on here are already signed up for our facilities updates, but if you aren't, I certainly encourage you to do so. You can find information on how to sign up for those updates on our website. And speaking of our website, the district is launching a new website tomorrow.
Yes.
So I encourage folks to come check out our redesigned website as of tomorrow. You'll see when you log in or access the website for the first time, there will be an opportunity to provide feedback if there's any technical issues that you're having, just so we can address those as the new website launches. But we're very excited. It's been work that's been going on for a long time and is certainly tied to our work around facilities engagement, because our new website platform will also help us reach broader audiences related to providing facilities updates. So
Yes, we're very excited. All right, well, I think
thank
that's it.
you, everybody, for joining,
Yes,
and have a great afternoon.
thank you so much. Bye.